Welcome, seekers of Middle-earth's deepest lore, to a tale of pride, ambition, and the fateful feud that shaped the doom of the Noldor. Today, we unravel the secret rivalry between two of the greatest sons of Finwë, Fëanor, the fiery spirit of creation, and Fingolfin, the steadfast heart of leadership. Their struggle, born in the bliss of Valinor, would burn like a hidden ember beneath the surface of elven history, only to ignite a catastrophic blaze that led their people into exile and ruin. In the elder days of the world, when the two trees of Valinor still poured their radiant light upon the land of Aman, Finwë ruled as High King of the Noldor. Blessed with wisdom and love for the craft of making, he was the father of 3 sons by 2 wives. His firstborn, Finwë, whom the world would call Fëanor, was a child of blazing brilliance, gifted in mind and hand beyond all others of his kind. His mother, Miriel, poured her very spirit into him. So great was his fire, and she perished in grief, leaving him alone in the world save for his father's care. Finwë, stricken with sorrow, yet desiring love anew, wed again, and from this union came Fingolfin and Fëanor, noble princes of a different temper than their elder half-brother. From the very beginning, a silent rift lay between Fëanor and Fingolfin. Though both were mighty among the Eldar, Fëanor's pride would not suffer a rival, nor could he look upon his father's second family without a shadow of bitterness. His mother's death left a wound upon his heart, one that deepened when he beheld Finwë's love for his younger children. And yet, it was Fingolfin, not Fëanor, who would grow into the role of a leader of the people, beloved by many for his strength, wisdom, and fairness. In this lay the seed of strife, the unspoken contest between 2 great wills, one aflame with restless genius, the other resolute and unyielding. But the doom of the Noldor was not woven by their discord alone. Even as Fëanor worked in his forge, shaping wonders beyond measure, a greater shadow fell upon Valinor. Melkor, the great enemy of the world, ever envious of the children of Ilúvatar, whispered his lies among the Noldor. He saw the growing pride of Fëanor and the quiet strength of Fingolfin, and kindled their unspoken rivalry into open distrust. To Fëanor he spoke of plots, of how the Valar favored his younger kin and sought to rob him of his place. To Fingolfin he sowed doubt, suggesting that Fëanor would soon claim lordship over all, bending the Noldor to his fiery will. Thus, in the year of the trees 1490, the festering bitterness found voice. Before the assembled lords of the Noldor, Fëanor, in wrath, accused Fingolfin of seeking to usurp him. With his own hand he drew a sword upon his half-brother, a terrible crime in the Blessed Realm, where no blade had ever been raised in enmity before. The Valar, troubled by the unrest among their beloved children, summoned Fëanor to stand before them. There his heart was laid bare, and his exile from Tirion was decreed. Yet Fingolfin, though wronged, sought peace, and extended his hand to Fëanor, speaking words of reconciliation before all. "Half-brother in blood, full brother in heart will I be. Thou shalt lead, and I will follow." But in Fëanor's eyes, the words rang hollow, and his pride did not soften. Yet the tale does not end here, for greater tragedy was yet to come. And so, as the light of Valinor wanes and the long night of betrayal nears, we turn to the next chapter of our story, where vengeance and oath shall seal the fate of the Noldor. Darkness fell upon Valinor, not only in the hearts of the Noldor, but in the land itself. In the year of the trees 1495, Melkor struck his most terrible blow, slaying Finwë the High King and extinguishing the light of the 2 trees. With the Silmarils stolen, the greatest works of Fëanor's hands now lay in the grasp of the enemy, who fled into the night. In his grief and wrath, Fëanor's fire burned hotter than ever before. Before the host of the Noldor, he swore a dreadful oath, one that would bind his fate, the fate of his sons, and the doom of all who followed him. Be he foe or friend, be he foul or clean, brood of Morgoth or bright Valar, elder or mayor or aftercomer, mortal or immortal, none shall hold the Silmarils from us and live. His voice rang in the night, and the assembled Noldor trembled at the words, for they were bound by an unbreakable curse, calling down ruin upon any who would stand in their way. And yet, in that hour of despair, there stood Fingolfin, the second son, the unshaken pillar of his people. He did not trust Fëanor, nor did he believe in his reckless war against Morgoth. But he could not abandon his kin, nor would he allow the Noldor to be led into folly without him. And so, when Fëanor called for the host to depart from Aman and seek vengeance in Middle-earth, Fingolfin too made ready. Yet already the seeds of division had been sown. Many of the Noldor murmured that Fingolfin's people should lead, that he was the rightful heir after Finwë's death. And though he did not seek to usurp, Fëanor perceived it as a challenge to his supremacy. The march from Aman was bitter, a journey born of pride and wrath rather than wisdom. Fëanor and his sons took command, pushing ever forward in their hunger for vengeance, while Fingolfin led those who followed him, wary but resolute. The hosts moved as one toward Alqualondo, where the Teleri, the sea-loving kin of the Noldor, dwelt in peace. And there, the final sin was committed. The kinslaying, the first slaying of elf by elf, as Fëanor sought to seize the white ships of the Teleri by force. Blood stained the shores, and though Fingolfin's people did not strike first, they too were drawn into the slaughter, their swords rising against their own kin in the madness of the moment. And when the sea ran red, the fate of the Noldor was sealed. But even now the rivalry did not cease. Fëanor, having taken the stolen ships, made his final betrayal. Gathering his closest followers, he crossed the sea to Middle-earth, leaving Fingolfin and his host behind in the cold of the northern waste. When Fingolfin's heralds called out, demanding the ships, Fëanor burned them before their eyes, declaring that only those he deemed worthy would set foot upon the new land. Rage such as had never been known before filled Fingolfin's heart, but he did not weep nor cry out. Instead, with grim determination, he turned northward, leading his people upon the grinding ice of the Helcarax, a cruel road of suffering where many perished, yet still he endured. And so when at last Fingolfin set foot upon the shores of Middle-earth, the sun rose for the first time. A new age had begun, but the fire of wrath still smoldered in his heart. No longer would he bow to the will of his half-brother. And soon the two great lords of the Noldor would meet again, not as rivals in the court of Valinor, but as kings upon a land of war, where fate would drive them to stand against the might of Morgoth himself. The land of Beleriand lay before them, but it was not theirs to claim unchallenged. Morgoth, from the black depths of Angband, watched the Noldor with cold malice, for though they had come seeking vengeance, he had long prepared for their arrival. Yet even the Dark Lord, master of deceit and destruction, had not foreseen the depths of the Noldor's division. Fëanor, unyielding in his wrath, struck first, leading his host in a great assault upon Morgoth's forces. This battle, the Dagor Nuin-Gileath, the battle under stars, was a terrible yet glorious victory, for the Noldor, newly come from the light of Aman, burned bright upon the field. The hosts of Morgoth were driven back, and Fëanor, in his relentless pursuit, came near to the gates of Angband itself. But even the mightiest fire, if it burns too fiercely, consumes itself. In his reckless fury, Fëanor outpaced his warriors, and Morgoth, ever cunning, set a trap. Balrogs issued forth from Angband, led by Gothmog, their lord, and they fell upon Fëanor with fire and whip and blackened steel. Though he fought with the strength of his father's house and slew many foes, he was overwhelmed. There, upon the stones of Dor Daediloth, the greatest craftsman of the Eldar was struck down. His sons came too late, driving back the foe, but Fëanor's body was broken and his fire spent. Yet even in death, his spirit burned so fiercely that his flesh was consumed, leaving only ashes upon the wind. Fingolfin, arriving at last in Middle-earth, heard the tidings of his brother's fall. He did not mourn, nor did he offer words of grief, for his heart had long turned to steel. The one who had abandoned him, who had burned the ships and left him to cross the ice, had met his doom, and now the burden of kingship lay upon new shoulders. The hosts of the Noldor gathered, and in this moment of turmoil, the silent struggle that had endured for centuries reached its final contest. The sons of Fëanor, bound by their father's oath, claimed lordship by right of blood. But Fingolfin, who had suffered the ice, who had endured where others faltered, would not bow before them. Thus, before the assembled hosts, Fingolfin raised his voice. "The house of Finwë is not diminished, nor shall the Noldor wander leaderless in this new land. By wrath and ruin have we come, but by wisdom and strength shall we endure. Let all who would stand against the darkness follow me, and together we shall carve a kingdom in this place." And many, weary of the folly of the oath, turned to him, for in him they saw not the fire of pride, but the unshaken resolve of a true king. And so Fingolfin was named High King of the Noldor, and the sons of Fëanor, though they did not love him, did not openly challenge his rule, for the time for vengeance upon Morgoth had not yet passed. And so the Noldor took to their new realms, building strongholds against the darkness. Fingolfin held dominion in Hithlum, watching ever toward the north, while Maedhros, eldest of Fëanor's sons, ruled from Himring. The years that followed were years of uneasy peace, but the rivalry between the two houses was not forgotten. It lay beneath the surface, unspoken, yet ever present, a wound that time could not heal. For as long as the oath remained unfulfilled, the fire of Fëanor still burned in the hearts of his sons, and the shadow of doom yet loomed over them all. But the doom of Mandos had not been spoken in vain. The Noldor, for all their valor, were exiles in a land fated to ruin. And though Fingolfin was now High King, his greatest trial had yet to come. The wrath of Morgoth was not stilled, and the day would come when the black foe of the world would rise in full might against the sons of Finwë. And when that hour arrived, Fingolfin would stand alone before the gates of Angband, facing his doom in an act of defiance that would echo through the ages. Years passed in Middle-earth, and under Fingolfin's rule the Noldor fortified their realms, ever watchful of Morgoth's designs. Though the High King did not trust the sons of Fëanor, and they in turn held little love for him, an uneasy alliance was kept. The siege of Angband began, and for a time it seemed that the Noldor might hold their ground against the darkness. Yet Fingolfin knew well that Morgoth's malice was deep, and his patience long. The black foe did not strike in haste. He waited, scheming in the shadows, until the hour of his choosing. At last, in the year of the sun 455 of the First Age, the doom of the Noldor moved toward its fulfillment. Morgoth unleashed his full wrath in the Dagor Bragolach, the Battle of Sudden Flame. The siege was shattered as rivers of fire poured from Thangorodrim, and in the blackened sky, dragons and balrogs swept forth. The hosts of the Noldor, though valiant, were broken upon the fields of Ardgalen, their strongholds sundered, and their warriors slain in untold numbers. Maedhros and his brothers were driven from their lands, and Fingolfin's forces, holding out in the west, could not turn the tide of ruin. It was in this hour of despair that Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, made his final choice. Wrath filled his heart, not the prideful fire of Fëanor, but the cold fury of a warrior who knows that death has come, yet will not suffer defeat without a reckoning. He saw his people fall, the Noldor scattered like leaves in a storm, and he knew that the time had come to strike one last blow against the darkness. Alone he rode forth upon his steed Rokalor, clad in silver and blue, the light of the sun gleaming upon his armor. Across the burning fields of Ardgalen he passed, and none could stand against him. Orcs fled in terror at his approach, for the wrath of the High King was a thing beyond their reckoning. Even the Balrogs did not dare hinder his path, for he rode with the fire of Aman upon him, his sword Ringil shining cold and bright as the frost of the Helcorax. At last Fingolfin came to Angband, where the gates of the Dark Lord loomed high, and there he called Morgoth forth. 3 times he struck the great doors with his sword, and his voice rang across the plains, challenging the black foe to single combat. And though Morgoth was a god among the fallen Ainur, he did not refuse the duel. He had long feared Fingolfin, knowing the might and valor within him, Yet he could not suffer the insult of his challenge. So he came forth, clad in black armor, his great hammer ground in his hands, and the earth quaked beneath his steps. Then was fought the most fateful duel of the elder days, a battle sung of in song for ages to come. Morgoth, vast and terrible, struck with Grond, shattering the ground with each blow. But Fingolfin was swift as the wind, and time and again he evaded the hammer's fall, striking back with Ringil, his blade cutting Morgoth's flesh and drawing forth his dark blood. 7 times did he wound the Dark Lord, and the cries of Morgoth were heard in every corner of Angband. Never before had he suffered such pain, and never again would he forget it. But the High King was still mortal, and his strength began to wane. At last he stumbled, and Morgoth's hammer found him, crushing him to the ground. Yet even as death took him, Fingolfin with his last strength hewed once more, striking Morgoth's foot so deeply that his wound would never fully heal. The Dark Lord, in his wrath and humiliation, would not grant him a warrior's burial. Instead, he sought to desecrate the fallen king. But the great eagle Thorondor came, bearing Fingolfin's broken body away, to be laid in honor upon a mountain peak. Thus fell Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, the mightiest of elven warriors, whose name Morgoth cursed until the end of days. And though his fall marked the beginning of the Noldor's greatest despair, his defiance stood as a symbol of resistance against the darkness. His duel was the last true challenge Morgoth ever faced in single combat, for after that day, the Dark Lord would never again dare to face an enemy alone. And so the rivalry of Fëanor and Fingolfin came to its final end, not in words of reconciliation nor in a meeting of equals, but in the echoes of their choices. One driven by pride to ruin his kin, the other compelled by duty to stand until his last breath against the shadow. The Noldor had long been doomed, but in the courage of Fingolfin, a light remained, a memory that even in the blackest hour, the fire of the Eldar would never be wholly quenched.